this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Today I'm watering my mounts and I might pick on a few that just never get filmed because they don't do much, so they just get bypassed very quickly. So I might pick up on a few of those and have a quick chat about them. But I want to actually feed my mounts today. So before I start, obviously that's pure RO water, so I've got a task to do that's really difficult. Those little things lurking up there are not going to survive forever without some water, so I can't see what I'm doing here. Whoops, that's dropped one. I'll recover that in a minute, but they need watering. So that's what we do. We get them down and we chuck them in there and leave them to soak for a bit and give them a sploop. Now, where did that one I dropped go? So I always do these 4 small ones first because they all fit in there at the same time. Well, that doesn't look very happy, does it? It doesn't, does it? Perhaps it needs watering a bit more often. These get very badly neglected, I'm afraid, but due to a set of circumstances and the memory that these now invoke, I think I might start looking after them a bit better, just for that reason. Just because they're now part of a memory. So that's what I do. I give them a good shake, and you can see all the air bubbles coming out, and where those air bubbles come out, they get replaced by water, and it gets right down into the plants. Oh, that one's got a side growth. You can tell how often I look at these. Yeah, that one's got a growth coming out the side. That one flowered not too long ago. Pretty little emphasis on the little flowers. It's actually got some roots coming out the bottom as well, which some do, some don't. What's this one doing? Not a lot. But again, it's grown some roots this year that it hasn't had before. And it's getting bigger. Progress. Now this one feels a bit loose and floppy. I've got a feeling this one needs watering more often. And again, it looks like it's got at least one, maybe 2 crowns now, so it's obviously pushed out some growth out of the side. But you know, these are air plants, and it's all in the name. You know, they do tend to not need a huge amount of water, but that doesn't exclude their need for some. So every now and again I need to do this, and quite honestly I'm going to put an entry in my notes as to when I do this, so that it'll, every time I update my notes, which is most days, I'll see that line that says air plants watered on such and such a date, and it'll remind me to just do it more often, because these just sit up there and get totally neglected. So anyway, that's the watering process that I do, and yeah, I mean, they'll just get left to soak for a bit while I go and do something else. And then I'll come back in a minute and give them a good shake and do the other 2 bigger ones, because they have to go in on their own because they're bigger, they don't fit. But those 4 all go in together. That one definitely doesn't look happy. Please don't ask what they're called, because I don't know. They were bought as a job lot, and at the time they had little tiny tags with their names on that were like made out of paper. And quite honestly, they just didn't last very long, and the names of them didn't seem important at the time, because I didn't think I'd be able to grow them, so I didn't think they'd last long. But yeah, I mean, some of them are growing. They are actually progressing. So anyway, I'll come back to them in a minute. Okay, they've had a reasonable soak now. You can see the change in colour, and then what I do is I flip them like that. And basically that gets the water out from down in between those little leaves and out of the crown. I'm not sure that's essential, but somewhere back in the dim and distant somebody told me to do that, and as I know nothing about air plants, I'd rather do what somebody else says. Yeah, you can see the water collected all in round the base there. Well, I presume you can. And that just, by giving them a good flip like that, it's gone. So that stops it sitting there. I don't think there's anywhere on that water can sit. And then I'll just do the same again for the other 2 bigger ones, but as I say, they don't fit in. I have to do them one at a time. But it's the same principle, and then I'll just hang them back up again, and that's it. But I do think I need to do that a bit more often and not just leave them to themselves. They do need a drink now and again, but I don't feed them as such. And again, if anybody knows better, let me know. I know nothing about these things. They only ever get pure water, and that's all they've ever had. So that's what I do. And with the power of video editing, I can slot this clip in the gap between the other two clips about my air plants. So while those were being left to soak, yeah, I'm cheating a bit, but I did forget my Spanish moss. Now that, when I get the chance, and I remember, gets a good soak. It normally gets a spray most days. Sometimes I forget and it doesn't get done, but most days my Spanish moss gets a spray, so that's just clean water. But every now and again it gets a good soak, you know, sort of 15-20 minutes or so, and it just gets left to absorb as much water as it can. Then it just gets hung back up again. But it's still an air plant, even though it's got moss in the name. It still comes into the same category as the air plants, but this one gets watered a lot more often. Now, I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but it seems to grow, and every now and again it produces little flowers. But they're so small, if you don't look carefully, you'd miss them. They only last a couple of days as well. But it does flower now and again. But it seems pretty healthy, and it does grow. So at least something's working. With the way I treat it, it seems okay. But obviously it never gets left wet. And in the environment in here with the circulating fans on, quite honestly, if I spray it, it goes dark green, and within half an hour it's gone white again. So, you know, it takes in that water very quickly. And that would be a limited amount of water from a sprayer compared with this, which is a good soak. This will now stay dark green for probably several hours before it dries out again. So it's had a good watering, and it gets that probably every 4 or 5 days, something like that. And in between it would get a spray now and again. So that's how I treat my Spanish moss, and it seems to be working. Strange how looking after orchids gets a certain eye. Now, as soon as I picked that plant up, I thought, what are those pale dots? What are those pale dots? I've seen that before. Haven't we? So that's not what I expected to find on an air plant. But any little hidey hole that the blighters can get in, they will get in. So luckily I hadn't put that in the water yet. But look, even under the wire. That's scale, by the way. In its early stages, it will eventually produce the adult limpet-like things. Look, even down there. Little blighters. At least I assume it's crawler stage scale. Whatever it is, I'm not mixing up some systemic stuff just for one plant, because I can't measure the amount small enough. I have to mix up a litre to get it accurate, so I'm not mucking about. But I do have some of this lying around from well, from times before, which is just a Tesco, you know, bug killer basically, and it says it deals with soft scale. So we'll give it a spray with that, give it a chance to do its stuff, and then we'll water it. But yeah, I certainly didn't expect to see that on an air plant, but at least I've found it and I can now deal with it. Little blighters get everywhere. I don't film that sort of thing, but the whole of the grow room was sprayed with the systemic bug killer within the last few days. Literally every single plant, without fail, without exception. But guess who forgot the air plants? Anyway, I'll deal with that one on its own. I've checked the others and they're fine. They've just got at this one. And this is a strange blinking plant. It is actually growing a new plant inside, which is good because the old one didn't look too good. The whole stem's hollow. And yeah, it's got, when I got it, it was in soil, which I'm not sure was right, so I took it out. And I mean, those roots do seem to absorb a bit of moisture when I water it, but yeah, I'm not sure what it's supposed to look like. I can tell it's too dry though, because it's limp. It's limp and floppy, and it shouldn't be like that. So anyway, I'll deal with the bugs and give that I can just put that to one side then and let the bug stuff do its thing, and then I'll come back to it and water it later, when hopefully they're all dead, little blighters. Actually, I think I'm going to keep that as a self-contained video, my air plants. Why not? I'll get on with my watering my mounts as a separate entity. Okay, so those are they. They are 6, bought as a job lot, various sizes and shapes and styles, and the amount I know about them is right next to nothing. Yeah, you've got nothing and then you've got lots, and my knowledge is down the nothing end, apart from the fact they do need a dunk now and again, you know, and they don't need keeping wet. That's about it. But what they're called and anything other than that, I don't know. But they're still alive, and I've had them sometime, so I must be doing something nearly right, at least, if not quite right. So there we go, that's my air plants. And as I said, they are now associated with a memory. So I want to keep them alive and keep them going. But that's not my special memory, that lives outside. I'll get to that later in the year.